This is one of the 9 coin-like gold pendants known as bracteates recently discovered on the island of Rennesøy in Stavanger in southwestern Norway, and they form part of a larger gold treasure from the 6th century, so from the migration period. Based on similar context involving numerous abandoned farms in this whole region of Rogaland, they were either hidden valuables or offerings to the gods in a crisis. But such objects that you're bound to see in many museums displaying artifacts from the Germanic world in late antiquity can also tell us a lot more about how the world was changing in this dramatic time. Let's have a look. Gold bracteates were produced in large numbers, and this happened primarily during the latter half of the 5th century and the early 6th century. Archaeologically, they are typically found in contexts of hoards, offerings, as well as grave goods. They're often interpreted as amulets, although they might also have functioned as regalia or diplomatic and political gifts. The idea of the bracteate as a magical amulet likely stems from the assumption that Roman gold medallions might have served a similar purpose. Regardless, bracteates clearly signify high social status and might have circulated as prestigious gifts within elite exchange networks, although the specific occasions for their use remain unclear. Additionally, they might have played a role within religious systems, possibly tied to the concept of sacred kinship. Some of the imagery, such as warrior like figures next to horses, does seem to enforce this idea. These bracteates imitate Roman imperial medallions and coins from the Constantinian dynasty, which ended in 363 AD. The production of Germanic medallion imitations began sometime in the second half of the 4th century, so it is a bit puzzling that the main period of bracteate production is generally dated to the 5th and 6th century, so we have a discrepancy here. The leading authority on the topic, Morten Axbo, a Danish archaeologist, explains it by stating that bracteates are only found in datable archaeological contexts from those later centuries, so the artifacts themselves might have been older, but the archaeological context is dated to much later. Additional dating methods rely mainly on typology, particularly through analysis of the Germanic animal styles, especially the so-called Nudem style. For example, C-type bracteates are closely linked to the early phases of animal style 1, while A-type bracteates might not significantly predate them. The archaeologist Axbo thus suggests that gold bracteate production began around 450 AD and continued until about 530 AD. But this doesn't fully resolve the chronological gap, so more than a century between the earliest medallion imitations and the widespread manufacture of bracteates. Furthermore, when relying heavily on find contexts, it can get problematic because bracteates, as well as medallion imitations, could have remained in use across generations before their final deposition. For instance, on the island of Gotland, bracteates have been discovered alongside Roman coins from the 1st century, which is why new theories have been proposed, such as bracteates that might have actually been produced within a much shorter time frame, perhaps limited to just 1 or 2 generations. Despite these chronological challenges, a relative typology was outlined. So we have, first of all, the bracteates of M type. They're thought to be the earliest, given their very close resemblance to Roman medallions, and one of them even includes some runes. It's dated back to the 4th century. That's rather an inscription. All other types are assigned to either the 5th or the 6th century. The A and C types follow M types, while D types are considered the latest. The inscriptions evolved over time from Roman capitals to imitations and eventually to runes, which reach their peak on C-type bracteates. Some bracteates depict scenes that might derive from Norse mythology, in particular those featuring human figures, horses, stags, or birds might be linked to the notion of the ideal king. So you could think of these bracteates as active instruments in social, religious, and political transactions. So they were not money, but they were some sort of special purpose money. We also have militaristic symbolism, that's also quite apparent in the iconography. The image of a Roman emperor might have served as a fitting model for military insignia, while the practice of Germanizing the emperor's face can be seen as a sort of cultural reversal, like Germanic cavalrymen working in the Roman army, such as the Equites Singularis, often adopting the emperor's names as personal cognomen. Several bracteates show clear Roman connections. For example, the inscription Walla Kürne on the Schürke C-type bracteate roughly translates as foreign grain, likely referring to Roman or Gallic gold molten from solidi coins. Bracteates from areas such as Dachum and Reusgott appear with Roman numerals, and we have the Haram medallion carrying the inscription Constantius. One inscription from Funen even carries the name of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius Carus, and then we also have numerous C-type bracteates featuring horsemen, possibly referring to the prominent role of Germanic auxiliaries such as Equites and Ale in the Roman military service beginning with Julius Caesar. Other motifs include swords, spears, or helmets. So, as you can see, there is reason to suggest that bracteates might have originated as military or class insignia, a function that would have evolved over time. Their discovery in graves, in treasures, as well as sacrificial deposits, even in women's graves, does not contradict such origin. These valuable objects, if you think of it, were very well suited for funerary use or offerings to deities. Nor would such usage be out of step with the polyvalent nature of the gods, some of whom governed war, death, healing, and fertility simultaneously. Roman medallions and Byzantine coins were never intended for trade. Outside of the empire, they likely functioned as tribute or symbolic gifts in political contexts. And this has to do with the fact that in late antiquity, a new elite class emerged, one that acted as intermediary between gods, ancestors, and the living community. So, precious gifts such as these were used to secure divine and ancestral favor for the established social order, while the burial of wealth served to ensure personal well being in the afterlife as well. A strong connection can be drawn between elite residences and sites of ritual activity, as exemplified by Gudme in Denmark, which is a site I talked about at length in a previous video. A vast number of bracteates have been found here, but only a few of them bear runes. Notably, there is one Guthmer 2b, which depicts a figure resembling Victoria or Fortuna, flanked by two other possibly Roman figures, with a runic inscription, just four letters of the elder Futhark. Might have meant something, but it's unclear now. However, what is important here is that the bracteate period coincides with the emergence of this new aristocracy. And with the rise of Scandinavian animal style during the early migration period, we begin to see imagery that clearly conveys ideological and religious symbolism. Consequently, bracteates might have also been involved in cultic rituals. Their discovery, alongside other interesting objects, such as these ones here, they are called gubbar, these thin gold foil figures, at places such as Gudme mentioned before, but also Lundeborg, Odense, Sortemol, and Helge, suggest that religious rites were performed in or near elite settlements rather than just remote natural settings. There is a shift definitely indicating that the migration period aristocracy had acquired sufficient authority to institutionalize sacrificial practices within their own power centers. It seems that in this particular period, runes in Denmark, interestingly, only appeared or almost exclusively appeared on these bracteates. So, bracteates point to an active exchange of objects and ideas both within the Germanic world and between the Germanic world and the Roman Empire. They can be viewed as components of a gift exchange system that linked elites in Scandinavia, the continent, and early England as well. Early runic inscriptions on these objects do not appear to have functioned as tools of communication in the modern sense, but instead, many bracteate legends seem to have had a very specific, potentially symbolic function. The imagery on bracteates often includes mythological motifs or allusions to idealized rulership. Some of the runic inscriptions might have contributed to this symbolic message as well. Writing in itself would have been considered a high status thing at the time. And the Roman connection is evident in the adoption of Roman iconography, Latin letter forms, suggesting that segments of the Germanic elites were familiar with aspects of Roman visual and cultural codes. According to Morton Axpo, this familiarity reflects not only knowledge of Roman symbols and authority, but also a process of selective adaptation of these symbols to local social and political needs. The elite's position in society would have been legitimized through genealogy, so called stirpsregia, which meant tracing your lineage back to a mythological ancestor, whether a deity or a heroic figure. This means gods or myths, ritual practices that played a crucial role in integrating society and legitimizing values and norms. Religion also provided coherence, stability, and continuity. So, in this whole picture, we can argue that bracteates served as some sort of political media used in contexts where politics and religion would have intersected, such as grand feasts, religious ceremonies, or swearing oaths of loyalty. Out of more than 900 known bracteates, fewer than 150 have been found beyond the areas where they were produced. Most of them come from Germany, though finds stretch as far south as Hungary, as far east as Russia, and in Western Europe, the largest concentration occurs in England. Notably, the context of these finds varies geographically. For example, in Denmark, southern Sweden, as well as in the Oslofjord region and the North Sea coasts of northern Germany and Frisia, bracteates are primarily recovered from hoards or ritual deposits. And in contrast, we have areas in England, Germany, and Norway where they are typically found as stray objects or in graves. Such variation suggests different regional practices regarding the function and deposition of bracteates. In some areas, particularly around the Baltic and the North Sea, the deposition might have been linked to cultic or ritual activity, not observed elsewhere, where bracteates may have functioned primarily as prestigious adornments, especially for women. These differences likely reflected a very dynamic gift exchange system in which bracteates circulated as valuable symbols for elites, but their meanings adapted to local social and cultural frameworks. So, the evidence points to a form of leadership that fused religious and secular authority within quite a complex social structure. While it is conceivable that some form of legislation or administrative record existed, possibly requiring the use of writing, no such written evidence has survived. It is more likely that the oral tradition continued to dominate and writing remained restricted to symbolic elite centered contexts. Which is why you need objects such as these bracteates, because they're very useful to display and enforce your position and authority. If you do want to research this topic, the main source is the 7-volume collection Die Goldtraktaten der Völkerwanderungszeit, ein ikonographischer Katalog. It is in German, but it has been digitized and it's very, very comprehensive, and I'm sure you'll be able to figure out some of the iconography. I hope you enjoyed, and if you want to support this public history channel, you can do so by joining as members, and you do get benefits such as exclusive posts, including some of my university materials. If I sparked off your interest in bracteates with this video, continue with my video on the oldest inscription containing the name of Odin, which is on a bracteate. This was Irina. Thank you very much for watching or listening. Take care, and till next time.